back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And we are back with the Bellator 193, Larkin versus Fernando Gonzalez predictions. This is the second ever Bellator event on the Paramount Network and the second Bellator event of 2018. If you recall, the first was Bellator 192, which was headlined by Chael Sonnen versus Rampage Jackson and co-headlined by Rory McDonald versus Douglas Lima for the Bellator welterweight title. Chael Sonnen beat Rampage Jackson and advanced in the heavyweight Grand Prix, and Rory McDonald beat Douglas Lima to become Bellator's welterweight champion. Now, there's no title fights on the line at Bellator 193, but still a dope welterweight fight in the main event, and also a pretty exciting fight in the co-main event between Saad Awad, an experienced Bellator veteran, who's going to be taking on JJ Ambrose, making his Bellator debut on a 5-fight winning streak. But first, we're going to start with the first fight of the night on these predictions, so let's get straight to it. Steve Cazzola versus Jake Smith. Now, a lot of people who coming into this event might be thinking, who the fuck are those guys? Because like me, you watch Bellator, but you know, we were just coming along to the Bellator bandwagon, you know, over the last coming years or so. Now that Bellator's making big moves, picking up a lot of UFC veterans like Larkin, Rory McDonald, Chael Sonnen, you know. So now a lot of, I know I've definitely been paying a lot of attention to Bellator, but I don't quite know their entire roster like we might the UFC. So Jake Smith, and some of these guys are making their Bellator debut, so you really might not know who they are, as in Jake Smith. So I did research on the main card. This is the main card preview and prediction. So let's start with Jake Smith in the first fight. Jake Smith is 6-2. They don't have his picture yet because he's making his Bellator debut. But Jake Smith is 6-2 overall. He's coming off of a split decision win in King of the Cage, and he went 1-1 in 2017. So he lost a fight and then got a split decision victory, but it was outside of Bellator. Now, Steve Cazzola, his opponent, is 8-1, and he was undefeated coming into his last fight, where he was fighting another undefeated fighter. It was Steve Cazzola versus Carrington Banks. They were both undefeated. Carrington Banks won the fight via decision, so Steve Cazzola lost his O, but he's still 8-1, and he's also got more Bellator experience in this fight. So I'm going to be picking Steve Cazzola for the win because his only loss is to another undefeated Bellator fighter, and this is still going to be Jake Smith's first fight with Bellator, and Steve Cazzola is also a little more experienced. So with that being said, I'm going with Steve Cazzola. Now, in the next fight, we've got AJ Matthews versus Kendall Grove. Kendall Grove, a lot of you are probably familiar with. He's 23-17 overall, so that's 50 professional fights, or no, that's 40 professional fights. And you know, he's about a 500 record, so not the best record, but he's fought, you know, a UFC veteran, Bellator veteran. He's fought all around the world. So Kendall Grove, a lot of you might know, but he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights, but he is on a 2-fight losing streak where he was TKO or KO'd by Alexander Shlemenko, who just fought Gegard Mousasi. So he's definitely Alexander Shlemenko is a very good fighter, but Kendall Grove lost to Shlemenko, and he was also submitted most recently in the first round by John Salter, who, even if you might not know his name, I checked him out on Sherdog, and John Salter's like 5-1 in his last 6 fights or something, so he's definitely a good fighter as well. So Kendall Grove is on a 2-fight losing streak, but to do 2 good fighters. Now, Kendall Grove is going to be fighting AJ Matthews, who's 8-7 overall, and now Kendall Grove's 35 years old, AJ Matthews 30 years old. A little bit of an age difference, but not much. AJ Matthews is 8-7, so the record is kind of the same as far as really close to 500. Kendall Grove just has more experience, but AJ Matthews is on a 4-fight losing streak, and he's also never fought in the UFC before. So I'm going to be picking the UFC veteran Kendall Grove, who's got more experience. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, so it's the other guy's on a 4-fight losing streak, so he's on less of a losing streak, more experienced, and he's also lost to really tough opponents in his last 2 fights. So I'm rocking with Kendall Grove for that fight. Now into the co-main event, a lightweight bout between Saad Awad and JJ Ambrose. JJ Ambrose is going to be making his Bellator debut on a 5-fight winning streak, and Saad Awad is 21-9. So I'm going to start with Saad Awad. Saad Awad is 21-9 overall, 2-2 in his last 4 fights. He's riding a 2-fight winning streak over Ryan Quinn and Zach Freeman. You might know the name Zach Freeman, the guy that spoiled Aaron Pico's Bellator debut. So Saad Awad is on a 2-fight winning streak, and he's going to be fighting JJ Ambrose, who's 28-7. So he's got a little bit of a better record, and he's on a 5-fight winning streak. So if you don't really do your research, you might go with JJ Ambrose, but I'm going to be picking Saad Awad in this fight because he's fought higher level competition in his Bellator career than Ambrose, who's been fighting in the PXC and most recently like the HFS. I don't really know where those organizations are from, but he's on a 5-fight winning streak in those organizations, and his most recent opponent was 8-6. So I just feel like Saad Awad's been fighting a lot higher level competition. Zach Freeman, he's fought Patricky Pitbull in his Bellator career, multiple Bellator fights. So I'm picking Saad Awad to end JJ Ambrose's 5-fight winning streak. Now the catchweight main event, this was, I'm guessing, originally supposed to be a welterweight bout, but it's a catchweight, so they might be fighting at 180. I don't know where these guys are fighting. It says catchweight bout. I know Lorenz Larkin is naturally a welterweight, and I believe so is Fernando, but catchweight bout between Lorenz Larkin and Fernando Gonzalez. Fernando Gonzalez is 27-14, 34 years old. He's 7-1 in Bellator. That's his last 8 fights and all of his Bellator fights. His only loss in Bellator was a split decision to Michael Venom Page, and I believe he was the first one to really test Michael Venom Page's wrestling. That's the fight where he took him down multiple times, but I believe he still lost via split decision. So Fernando Gonzalez is a very skilled fighter at 27-14. A lot of those losses came in the beginning of his career, not recently, so not where he is now. So he's a very good fighter coming into this fight. Don't let his record deceive you, but he's gonna be fighting Lorenz Larkin, who is 18-7 and has just beat and lost to some of the best welterweights in the world. Lorenz Larkin is 18-7 as a professional fighter. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights, with 2 wins over Neil Magny and Jorge Masvidal, before signing with Bellator and losing the welterweight title fight to Douglas Lima, and then most recently getting knocked out by Paul Daly. Now I'm going to be picking Lorenz Larkin in this fight. Before I was really looking into his history, his entire history, I was leaning toward Fernando because I did my research on Fernando first. Like, yo, this dude is 7-1 in Bellator, only lost an arguable fight. He could be 8-0 in Bellator, but still Lorenz Larkin is just beaten, lost to some of the best guys, as I said. So I'm going to be picking Lorenz Larkin. He's got wins over Robbie Lawler in his past, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Jorge Masvidal, Neil Magny, and just, some of the top welterweights in the UFC to date. And even though he stumbled in his first 2 Bellator fights, it was to good fighters. And he's also even fought, even though he's lost in his first 2 Bellator fights, I think his experience is going to be enough to get the job done versus Fernando Gonzalez, even though Fernando Gonzalez only loss is arguable in Bellator. But I'm picking Lorenz Larkin in this fight, so those are my predictions. Steve Cazzola, Kendall Grove, Saad Awad, Lorenz Larkin. Let me know what you think about these predictions in the comments, man. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking D-O-double-G.